Okay, this video is going to be how to replace the LED screen on a Toshiba C650D, which is a model PSC16C00P00M. The first thing you want to do is make sure that it's unplugged and remove the battery, which gives you a little bit more ability when it comes to working on it. Now the second thing you do is open up the screen, and there's 4 tabs at each corner of the cover in the bezel. You need to take those tabs off. Try and preserve them if at all possible, because they're just aesthetic covers for the screw. And always lay out the pieces that you take off in order. Make sure that you take everything and put it in the process that you took it off, so that you can work your way backwards and get yourself back to where you started. You don't want to have a laptop at the end that isn't all in pieces. So once you take all the screw covers off, you're going to need a precision screwdriver. This particular one uses a Phillips. You just remove those 4 screws, lay those near. Notice I have a white cloth out. You want to use something. These screws are tiny and black, so it's best if you lay them out onto something where they'll contrast. If you don't, they're very easy to lose. And the ones at the bottom of the screen don't come out easily in the sense of falling into your hand, so you tend to have to drop them on the counter. Now there's only 4 screws in this bezel. You want to find, usually somewhere around the center is a good place. Oh, this one might be in the corner. And you need to split this. It's just held together with little plastic clips, so be careful, don't break them. This is something that you want to do fairly gently, especially the first time, because if you break this bezel, you're in deep trouble, because it won't hold the screen back in place properly anymore. Now they also run all the way across the bottom, so you need to carefully get those. Come on. There we go. Now the next trick is you actually have to, at the hinges on this model, gently, very gently, pry them out, because the hinge covers actually wrap around the metal. So be very gentle, don't break those. Now once you take it off, the screen's pretty much exposed. You need to take off the locking screws on the back of the screen. There's one located on each side at the bottom. And they lock the back of the plastic top to the screen. Once they're out, set them in order. Always set things in order as you're taking them off. Makes life easier when you go to put it back together. You can tell, if you have to look, you can tell this is an LED screen by the single connector. Always make sure that you order the right one, because if you order the wrong one, it won't work. You won't be able to get it in. LEDs do not require an inverter. Now, the next thing we have to do is remove the screws from the side bezels of the monitor, so that we can actually replace the LCD and put the new one in. These screws are really tiny, so you want to set those very carefully on your white cloth as well. So take 2 out of one side, and then take 2 out of the other side. And after this, all we have to do is take the connector off the back. Now the reason I left the bottom one on that side is so that I can sort of lay the screen down, so that I can take the last one out. There's a 40-pin connector here. Very carefully loosen up the connector and separate. Now, what you want to do is you want to release that. If you notice, there's a bit of tape there, and it just slides into that 40-pin connector. We've now removed the old broken monitor, and we're ready to put in the new monitor. Take the protective cover and peel it back, but don't take it off, because we're going to have to set the monitor on some things along this path. So if you leave that protective cover in place, then if we set it against something, we're less likely to damage the monitor. Okay, you want to start all 6 screws in the frame around the monitor before you connect this. And then you want to connect this 40-pin connector. Now, try and leave the tape in place and make sure you don't bend any of these pins. Okay, make sure it's in place and then push the tape back down. An additional piece of Scotch tape just to hold everything in place probably isn't a bad idea. Make sure that your connection is good though. Okay, so now, as I said, you want to leave this cover on because at the moment there's a good odds that you're going to damage the screen if you aren't careful. Tighten these right up once it's connected. Make sure all 6 screws in the side bezel are tight. Okay, making sure that all of your cords are tucked back in place. Lift the back up and realign everything back in place and put your 2 holding screws at the base of the monitor. Make sure to use the proper holes, because if you use the wrong ones, you aren't going to be able to put the bezel back on the monitor. Okay? Now that we're at this point, we can take this off. And we have 1 step left, and that's to put the bezel back on. You want to start at the hinges and get the hinges on first. Be very careful. It's really easy to break it at this point. Once you got the hinges on, just find a nice spot where it starts to click together like that. Squeeze the bezel together all the way around, including the inside of the base. Should clip closed all the way around, and you should have a nice seal. There shouldn't be gaps in like that in the outside case. Once you've got everything clipped all the way around and everything's closed, so the last step is you put the 4 screws in and put the caps over, and then I'm gonna just suggest that we test this before we seal everything up, because it's never a bad idea to make sure that everything works before you seal it. And there you go.